the kingship of David, 2 Samuel chapter 2. We're looking at David's reign. It was not an easy transition from Saul's reign to David's reign. And tonight we're going to look at as much of the book of 2 Samuel as we can. And so we're going to start here in chapter 2. And there are some very, very interesting things. We noticed last time David's lament of the death of Saul and Jonathan. And he has nothing but wonderful and positive things to say about this man who has been his mortal enemy for many, many years. Quite often throughout the book of 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel, we see the nobility of the character of David. We see him as a man of great honor and bestowed great honor on others. And so that's what stands out to me in the life of David. So we're going to jump right in here. And we're looking at King David. So, let's pray. Father, as we open the Scriptures, we pray that the Spirit of God will be our teacher and guide us into all truth. We know that you have given us the Word as an eternal message, an eternal resource book, always relevant, always helpful, always a guide. And we are thankful that we have it, for without it, how poor we would be in our knowledge of you and even of ourselves. Bless, I pray, our time tonight in Jesus' name. Amen. In 2 Samuel chapter 2, we read that David inquired of the Lord. He's thinking about, okay, my time for kingship has come. And he says, shall I go up to any of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said to him, go up. David said, where shall I go up? And he said, go up to Hebron. Now, does anybody know where Hebron is? Yes, it's right, if you had a map, it's right there. Well, if you were to look at the Dead Sea, and you do have a map, I don't know if Hebron's on there, is it? If you were, it's just not, it's there. It's not there. Okay, you've got it on a map there. So if you were to look at the Dead Sea, and you were to, about halfway down, isn't it? Almost halfway down on the Dead Sea. You'll come pretty close. So, right about there. It's right where Shauna pointed. So we're well south into the kingdom of Judah. And David is from the tribe of what? Judah. So it's Satan territory. And God says for him to go up there. He will reign from Hebron for 7.5 years. And he will reign only over the kingdom, or the tribe of Judah, for 7.5 years. He's the king of all of Israel, but only for 33 years. He will be king of Judah for the first 7.5. And that's kind of interesting to me. So in 2 Samuel 2 and verse 5, David went up there, his two wives also, Ahinoam, the Jezreelite, and Abigail, the wife of Nabal, the Carmelite. And David brought up the men who were with him, every man with his household, and they dwelt in the city of Hebron. Cities of Hebron, showing that it's not just the town, but it's also the region that was right there. So the men of Judah, verse 4, came, and there they anointed David king over the house of Israel. Is that right? No, over the house of Judah. And they told David, saying, the men of Jabesh Gilead were the ones who buried Saul. So David sent messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead and said, you are blessed of the Lord, for you have shown this kindness to your Lord, to Saul, and have buried him. And now may the Lord show kindness and truth to you. I also will repay you this kindness, because you have done this thing. Now therefore let your hands be strengthened and be valiant, for your master Saul is dead, and also the house of Judah has anointed me king over them. So David is very gracious as he is announcing his kingship. But he's gracious toward his formal rival and those who have been kind to Saul. All right, but now look in contrast. But, verse 8. Somebody read verse 8.
But Abner, the son of Ner, commander of Saul's army, took Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and brought him over to Manahem. Pardon me. Then he made him king over Gilead, and the Asherites, and Jezreel, and Ephraim, and Benjamin, and all Israel.
Okay. And they have a steamroller there. Is that right, Phil?
Close.
Close, okay. Okay, now you've got the four people I want you to keep in mind. First of all, you have Saul, and he had a military commander named Abner, okay? Then you've got David, and he has a military commander. He will become the foremost commander later. And his name is Joab, okay? So Abner goes with Saul, and Joab goes with David. Okay, so we're going to keep those. So David's commander was who? Joab. Saul's commander was? Abner. One way to remember that, Saul was king first, and he gets the A. J follows sometime later. Okay. The interesting thing will happen, if I can just announce it, just kind of mention it here, is that Abner will then be faithful to Saul after Saul's death, right? And so that's what he's doing. He's taking a son of Saul, and as a military commander, you know, kind of what he says, who's going to oppose him? He's the military commander. And so when Saul is dead, Abner takes one of Saul's sons, Ishbosheth, and makes him king. Just kind of announces, this is your new king. There is not an actual, apparently there's not an actual coronation of him, because he's never listed as one of the kings either of Israel or altogether. So he's not really listed, even though for 2 years at least he is a king, so to speak. All right, so, but he takes him, it says, and he takes Ishbosheth, son of Saul, brought him to Mahanaim, and he made him king over Gilead and over the Asherites and over Jezreel and over Ephraim and over Benjamin and over all of Israel. If he'd have just skipped and went to over all of Israel. Yeah. So Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he began to reign over Israel. And he reigned for how many years? 2. Only the house of Judah followed David. Right now, I mean, this is kind of the seed bed for a later split between Judah and the rest of Israel. So we could blame it on Abner, I suppose. And the time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. So, it's kind of interesting. Okay, Israel and Judah were at war. Abner, the son of Ner, and the servants of Ishbosheth, son of Saul, went out from Mahanaim to Gibeon. Now, this place, Mahanaim, is going to figure into the story later on. Right now, it's kind of the center of Ishbosheth's reign, right? But it's going to be the center of David's refuge. It's going to have an interesting history, because before the story is done, this is where David will flee when his own son usurps the throne. Which one of David's sons will usurp the throne? That starts with an A. Absalom. Which doesn't make a lot of sense, because Shalom is in his name, and there wasn't a whole lot of peacemaking in that guy. But at any rate,
Maybe Ad means no.
yeah,
No peace.
no peace. Well, so there you have it. And so Saul was of the tribe of Benjamin, David was of the tribe of Judah. Okay, the transition from Saul to David was a rough one. Also, Saul believed that a son of Saul should sit on the throne. Didn't waste any time before they put Ishbosheth on the throne. To them, David was an imposter, not having a right to the throne. Now, just so you know where these two places are, here's Hebron, where David is ruling, and there we have Mahanaim, way up there, and we'll probably pronounce it 4 or 5 different ways. Mahanaim. Yes, that's what. I think I may have said that once, but probably not. Mahanaim. So there they are, and the two separate places. Now, let's move along. So there's war between the house of David and the house of Saul. So we mentioned the military captain of Abner, who had been captain of Saul's army, and now he sees to it that Ishbosheth is there. So except for Judah, the loyalties of people seem to be for the house of Saul. And Abner, as the head of Ishbosheth's army, apparently holds off the coronation of Ishbosheth because he is never recognized by Judah. And so he's probably waiting for Judah to get on board before there's an actual coronation. But he's called a king, at least. Okay, David is king over Judah alone for 7 years and 6 months. David's military captain is Joab. King Saul's military captain, Abner. Ishbosheth's son of Saul, military captain, Abner. Abner switches sides. Do you know why?
Well, it says right there, he was in fullness.
Oh, I guess it's right up here.
I don't think it's cheating when you put it on the board.
Probably isn't. He's insulted by Ishbosheth. He's accused of sleeping with at least one of Saul's concubines. In that culture, an action like that is the same as saying, I'm taken over. And doing that in public was an overt sign that you were now claiming the right to the throne. The interesting thing is that Abner apparently has not done that, but Ishbosheth accuses him of it. And it makes Abner pretty mad to have such an accusation made against him. So, let's see. Look with me at chapter 3. And verse 7. Saul had a concubine whose name was Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah. So Ishbosheth said to Abner, why have you gone into my father's concubine? And in verse 8, Abner became very angry at the words of Ishbosheth and said, am I a dog's head that belongs to Judah? In other words, am I the least in the person least of the people within the house of Judah? You're accusing me of being disloyal to you. I'm the guy who installed you as the king. Why are you accusing me of usurping it? But I'll tell you what, today I show loyalty to the house of Saul your father, and to his brothers, and to his friends, and have not delivered you into the hand of David. And you charge me today with a fault concerning this woman? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Look at verse 9. Somebody read verse 9 for me.
May God do so to Abner, and more also, if, as the Lord has sworn to David, I do not accomplish this for him.
To transfer the kingdom from the house of Saul and set up the throne of David over Israel and over Judah from Dan to Beersheba. So he's pretty mad, and he's saying, that's where you're going to treat me. I tell you what, I'm switching sides. And I'm going to do everything I can now to make David, whom God has anointed to be king over the whole thing, I'm switching sides, and I'm going to be loyal to him. You, the house of Saul, have been disloyal to me. Now I'm going to be loyal to God and to David. Well, you know, that's quite a statement, isn't it? And then, verse 12, Abner sent messengers on his behalf to David, saying, whose is the land? Meaning, David, are you claiming the kingship? Saying also, make your covenant with me, and indeed my hand shall be with you to bring all Israel to you. Yes, although not in his possession. But Abner is making such a statement. He says, I want you to know that I'm on your side now. And that would have sealed the deal pretty much. But the plot thickens. And so David said, good, I'll make a covenant with you, but one thing I require of you, you shall not see my face unless you first bring Michal, Saul's daughter, whom when you come to see my face. Who was she? Do you remember that Saul gave Michal to David as a wife? And then when David was fleeing, he gave her to somebody else, to another man? So she's been married for many years to another man. I guess it's polygamy. And so David sent messengers. David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, Saul's son, saying, give me my wife, Michal, whom I betrothed to myself for 100 foreskins of the Philistines. And Ishbosheth sent and took her from her husband, Paltiel, the son of Laish. Then her husband went along with her to Barum, weeping behind her. Oh, what a pathetic sight.
Oh.
He's walking, he's crying because his wife is leaving. And I don't know where her heart is. We don't know about that. And Abner said, go home. That's a pathetic sight, isn't it? Now Abner had communicated with the elders of Israel, saying, in time past, you were seeking for David to be king over you. Now then, do it. For the Lord has spoken of David, saying, by the hand of my servant David, I will save my people Israel from the hand of the Philistines and the hand of all their enemies. So Abner also spoke in the hearing of Benjamin. And then Abner also went to speak in the hearing of David in Hebron, all that seemed good to Israel and the whole house of Benjamin. So he's going wherever David has been, and he's saying, I'm for David. Wow, that was a powerful statement. So Abner enters the picture. Abner and 20 men with him came to David at Hebron. And David made a feast for Abner and the men who were with him. So far, so good, right? Then Abner said to David, I will arise and go and gather all Israel to my lord the king, that they may make a covenant with you, and that you may reign over all that your heart desires. It's all going good, isn't it? So David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. At that moment, onto the stage enters the servants of David and Joab came from a raid and brought much spoil with them. So he's been away. Abner has been away on a raid with his men. Okay? Joab, I mean. Been away on a raid with his men. They've been away. Abner was not with David in Hebron, for he had sent him away, and he was gone in peace. And when Joab and all the troops that were with him had come, they told Joab, saying, Abner the son of Ner came to the king, and he sent him away, and he is gone in peace. What? Our enemy? He sent him away? Oh no! And Joab came to the king and said, What have you done? And if he wasn't the king, you ignoramus. Look, Abner came to you. He was dropped right in your lap and you didn't kill him. Why is it that you sent him away and he's already gone? Surely you realize that Abner, the son of Ner, came to deceive you. Don't you know that? And you know you're going out, to know you're going out, you're coming in, and to know all that you are doing? He came as a spy. You were deceived. How naive can you be? Oh, my king. So when Joab had gone from David's presence, he sent messengers after Abner. Now this is not at David's instruction. This is Abner, or Joab's idea. He's going to send. Who brought him back from the well of Sirah. But David did not know it. Verse 27. Now when Abner had returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside in the gate to speak with him privately. Listen, I got something I want to share with you, man. Over here by the gate. There's a point I want to make. There he stabbed him in the stomach so that he died. Why? For the blood of Asahel, his brother. So this was actually an act of revenge. And in some battle, Abner had killed Joab's brother. Oh, you're the guy that killed my brother. Listen, I got a message for you. I hope you get the point. And he killed him. Afterward, when David heard it, he said, My kingdom and I are guiltless before the Lord forever of the blood of Abner, the son of Ner. Let it rest on the head of Joab and on all his father's house, and let there never fail to be in the house of Joab one who has a discharge, or is a leper, who leans on a staff or falls by the sword, or who lacks bread. He's putting a curse on the family of Joab. By the way, Joab is his nephew. And Abner was a cousin of Saul. So they kind of kept it in the family. So Joab and Abishai, his brother, killed Abner because he had killed their brother. Okay. And so David, verse 33, sang a lament over Abner and said, Should Abner die as a fool dies? Your hands were not bound, nor your feet put in fetters. As a man falls before wicked men, so you fell. Then all the people wept over him. And then David has this big time of mourning, and time of burial. and again is treating this man who had been among his mortal enemies. He treats him with respect because the guy had genuinely changed sides and then was killed. Well, the story goes on. When Saul's son heard that Abner had died in Hebron, he lost heart. My main man has not only deserted me, but now he's dead, and all Israel was troubled. In other words, everybody in the other tribes, they're all talking now. They're all talking. We don't have a military leader anymore. And they're talking. Now, Saul's son had two men who were captains of troops. Okay? The name of the one was Baanah and the other was Rechab. And the sons of Reman and Beerothite of the children of Benjamin. For Beeroth also was part of Benjamin, because the Beerothites fled to Githam and had been sojourners there until this day. Okay, so you got these two guys. And then we have a little parenthetical. We have a little parenthetical discussion about Jonathan's. Who is Jonathan? Saul's son. And what was the relationship between David and Jonathan? They were best buds, weren't they? And they had, Jonathan had done his best to protect David, and they were very, very good friends. Well, Jonathan had a son, and he was lame in the feet. Why was he lame? Well, when he was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel, and his nurse took him up and fled. Now, what they're talking about is when Saul and Jonathan were killed in battle. You remember, he had gone to the witch of Endor. Saul had gone to the witch of Endor, and the witch of Endor's Saul Samuel, the real deal. And Samuel said, "You're going to die. So is your son, your sons." And the next day, that's what happened in battle. Well, when news of that reached back home, this nurse thought, "Oh no, we've got to get out of here because David's men will probably be coming to kill us." And so she snatched the boy up. He was 5 years old, snatched him up, but something happened. She tripped, fell on him, and broke his legs or his feet or something. And in those days, medical attention isn't what it would be today. And the boy was lame and grew up to be a man. He was lame for the rest of his life, couldn't walk because of that accident. So anyway, his name was Mephibosheth. And, okay. Now, that was just a little parenthetical. Now we're back to the other story. Then the sons of Reman, the Beerothite, Rechab, and Baanah set out and came at about the heat of the day to the house of Ishbosheth. Remember now, don't get Ishbosheth and Mephibosheth mixed up. Okay, so Ishbosheth is the one that's been crowned the king, so to speak, by Abner. And he was lying on his bed. It was noon. And they came there, and they went into the house as though they were going to get wheat. Or they went into where he was lying down, and they stabbed him in the stomach. That seems to be a favorite way to stab people. Stab him in the stomach. Who else got stabbed in the stomach? We just read about Abner. Okay, and does anybody remember another guy that got stabbed in the stomach? Well, Ehud, the left-handed judge, did the stabbing. Does anybody remember King Eglon's name? Oh, that was it. Okay. So that's what was going on. And so they killed him. Now, I want you to watch what happens. Kind of interesting, David's reaction to this. Do you remember when this guy who claimed to be an Amalekite came back and said to David, I killed Saul. He was about to die, and I killed him. And what was David's reaction to that? You have just written your own death warrant. You have claimed that you have killed the Lord's anointed. And so, that young man, whether he, actually the real story was that Saul fell on his own sword and committed suicide. But this guy was going to kind of take credit. So he got killed for something he didn't even do. But it was his own word of testimony. I killed him.
That's what you should tell your kids when they're lying.
So here's this guy, and he kills a son of Saul, and apparent heir to a throne, though not really the Lord's anointed. But he was a son of Saul. And that carried with it great honor. And so, anyway, these guys come, and they, I lost my place. Somebody read it for me.
Verse 7, is that what you're saying?
8. And they brought the head of Ishbosheth, they beheaded him, and they brought the head of Ishbosheth to David in Hebron. And they said to the king, here's the head of Ishbosheth. It's kind of bloody, but here it is. The son of Saul, your enemy, who sought your life. And the Lord has avenged my lord, the king, this day of Saul and his descendants. I think they keep giving more information because they're not getting the right facial reaction from David. So they keep adding a little phrase. Your enemy, remember? Your enemy? The one that God delivered you from, you remember? So it's kind of like they keep giving more information. Verse 9, but David answered Rechab and Baanah, his brother, sons of Reman, Beerothite, and he said to them, as the Lord lives, who has redeemed my life from all adversity, when someone told me, saying, look, Saul is dead, thinking to have brought good news, I arrested him and had him executed in Ziklag, the one who thought I would give him a reward for his news. How much more, when wicked men have killed a righteous person in his own house, on his bed. Therefore shall I not now require his blood at your hand, and remove you from the earth? So David commanded his young men, and they executed them, cut off their hands and feet, and hanged them by the pool in Hebron. But they took the head of Ishbosheth and buried it in the tomb of Abner. So I think it's kind of interesting. These two guys parted ways, but they got their heads back together at the end. Let's see, we ought to pick up with some of this. Chapter 5, David reigns over all of Israel. Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and spoke, saying, indeed, we are your bone and your flesh. Also in time past, when Saul was king over us, you were the one who led Israel out and brought them in. And the Lord said to you, you shall shepherd my people Israel and be ruler over them. They're recounting that great history of David. They're all aware of it. God had blessed him. Therefore, all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord. And they anointed David king over Israel.
My letters don't match up.
Do what?
My F is not your F.
Oh, yes. This is going to be true now. You notice. My great apologies.
It's actually I.
So there are reasons for that which I cannot go into, because they would be self-incriminating.
Okay, so we're switching to I.
Yes. So, Lori, just listen. We have a section that, right here, that occurs later in your notes, and it belongs up here. So I brought it back up. If you turn a few pages, you'd find all this. All right, so he takes Jerusalem, and that will become his king. That's in verse 6 of chapter 5. They went to Jerusalem against the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, and so they take the city. Then David builds his house in chapter 5, verse 11. And literally a house. They built David a house with cedars and so on. And the Lord established David as the king over Israel. That's in verse 11. He exalted his kingdom for the sake of his people, Israel. And so he brings his more wives and his concubines and wives from Jerusalem after he had come from Hebron. And he mentions these are born. He has 19 children by wives. And he has some other children by concubines that aren't listed. David has 8 wives.
No wonder he got a terrible wife. He got what he deserved.
Yeah. And his son didn't learn much in that department because he wound up with 1,000 women, 300 wives, 700 concubines. So, next thing I want you to notice is the ark is brought to Jerusalem in chapter 6. David gathered all the choice men of Israel, 30,000, and he rose and went with the people who were with him, Baal, Judah, to bring up from there the ark of God, whose name is called by the name the Lord of hosts, who dwells between the cherubim. So they set the ark on a new ox cart. That was a mistake. It was a mistake because God had instructed Moses how to carry the ark. And it was supposed to be carried with poles that went through rings. And you'd have men on the poles who would be carrying it. But instead, David thought bringing it on an ox cart's a good idea. And so it's working pretty good for a while. And, well, verse 6, and when they came to Nahum's threshing floor, Uzzah put out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled at that threshing floor. And the guy didn't want the ark to slide off the ox cart, right? And so he's going to save it. Only nobody in that party seems to understand the absolute holiness of that box and the God who dwells between the cherubim. It says in verse 7, the anger of the Lord was aroused against Uzzah, and God struck him there for his error, and he died there by the ark of God. What was David's reaction? Anger. He got angry at God. David became angry because of the Lord's outbreak against Uzzah, and he called the name of that place Perez Uzzah to this day. And so he's thinking, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to move this thing. I thought I was doing God a favor. But now David has a kind of fear of the Lord. Verse 9, David was afraid of the Lord that day, and he said, how can the ark of the Lord come to me? And so David would not move the ark of the Lord with him into the city of David, but David took it aside into the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite. And the ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite, 3 months. And the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all of his household. And then David was told, you know, God is doing nothing but blessing that guy's house, because he has the ark. Oh, well, maybe we ought to try again. And so it was that David brought the ark, and notice those bearing the ark, now they're doing it the right way. They're carrying it instead of putting it on an ox cart. And they went 6 paces, and David stopped them. And there he sacrificed oxen and fatted sheep. And he danced before the Lord with all his might. He put his whole self into it. He's not angry at God now. He is celebrating the God of Israel. And the King David was leaping and whirling before the Lord. And Micah, his wife, saw him dancing. And she despised him for that. And anyway, so David returns to bless it, and Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, "How glorious was the king of Israel today, uncovering himself today in the eyes of the maids of his servants, as one of the base fellows shamelessly uncovers himself." David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord who chose me instead of your father and all of his house, to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord, over Israel. That's who I was dancing for, not the maidens." And she had no child, no children, until the day of her death, as God's judgment on her. Chapter 7, I want to mention 7, is probably one of the most important chapters in the book of 2 Samuel. I'd like you just to try to make a note in your mind. 2 Samuel 7. Everybody say, 2 Samuel 7. That's the Davidic covenant. And if you look at verse 13, somebody read verse 13. It goes down to about verse 26. Is going to be the Davidic covenant. Somebody read verse 13. I think it says 13.
He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever.
All right. So there's going to be a house, the house of David, that is established for how long? Forever. I will be his father. This is a son of David's. And he shall be my son. If he commits iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men and with the blows of the sons of men. But my mercy shall not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I removed from before you. And your house and your kingdom shall be established forever before you, and your throne shall be established forever. Now this passage is then understood by the Jews that the king, the Messiah, must be a descendant then of David. It is here established in chapter 7. So chapter 7 is the Davidic covenant. And then David reflects on it and just rejoices in the fact that his house has been established as the kingly line forever and ever and ever. There's some further things when you come to chapter 11. Well, you have kindness to Mephibosheth in 9. But chapter 11 is David and Bathsheba and Uriah. And we're not going to quite get to that, so I think we'll start the next time. But I would like to just point out that chapter 11 is kind of a watershed chapter in the life of David. Up to this point, his enemies have been outside his house. From chapter 11 on, we see the turning of events so that he will now be fighting against his own household. as a judgment from God. So when we're looking at this, and I'm going to have some new notes for you next week to make some corrections for what you have, and you can, cut and paste. But what you're going to find, I would like for you in this week to find 3 judgments of God. 3 judgments of God for his sin. 3 judgments on David for his sin with Bathsheba. And they're not up here. No, I don't have them up here yet. So, okay, I can give you that assignment. You don't have to be able to copy off the board. All right, Lori. Okay. So all through, every page of 2 Samuel has something interesting on it. It is such a very important time in Israel's history. And it's almost like every page makes a historical difference in what is going to take place later. Let's pray. We're thankful, Father, for the story of David, for it teaches us that you not only choose good men, but you choose good men who are sinners. And that your mercy and your grace extend beyond our sin. We learn so many important lessons from the life of David. We learn how to honor even those who have been our enemy. We learn to not allow others to take up our case, so to speak. Father, I just thank you for this book because it teaches me so many things about what it means to be a godly person, an honoring person. And so I just ask your blessing on us throughout this night and your blessing on the food that's been brought also. In Jesus' name.